everyone. You know what? A lot of people have a bad boss or a bad coworker story to tell. And for many of us, in retrospect, there are things that we could have done differently to maybe get some support in the meantime. But I thought I'd tell you about one boss from hell story. So it goes back to, well, quite a few years. And I was interviewing for a consulting job. Actually, I was going to mainly be a trainer at a software company for their financials package. I knew who the boss was by this time, and I had also interviewed with somebody who would be a coworker. And then when they called to make the offer, the boss didn't call. He had another person who I hadn't met. I'm going to call this guy Mark. That wasn't his real name. When Mark made the offer, I did what you're supposed to do. You hear it. You say, thank you very much for the offer. I'll think about it and let you know in a day or two. And he said, you have to think about it? So that was my first clue. But I didn't know who this guy was. But unbeknownst to me, he had been selected as the new boss of everybody, who would be in between the guy who I thought was going to be the boss and all of us. So Mark was in the middle. So I started there, and he was my new boss. Okay. Over time, he became more and more of a problem. Looking back, Mark had many qualities of a subtle bully. Just these subtle little behaviors that happen over time, and you can't put your finger on it, but it creates unnecessary stress. I got little to no support from him as his employee. Like I said, I was hired to train, and just as I was coming into the company, they had a new major release of software. So they had manufacturing, distribution, and financial package. And again, I was over with the financial package. The former version had a full set of training materials and a user guide. The new version had no training materials and very sparse user material. But I was supposed to train. They didn't train me. They didn't provide me with any training. So the first thing I realized I needed to do, because my classes, there were 9 of them, and they started with, we would teach them over a period of 3 weeks, 3 days per week, or I would be traveling to a customer site to train. I needed training materials, and it started with forming a company from scratch. I mean, to do anything in any of the other modules, you needed the financial package set up, at least the basics. So I set out to create my own training materials. So I'd have something, this is in the mid-90s, so I'd have something to give to the people, something that they could take home with them and put notes in as they took the classes. Well, he wanted me to lead good training classes where people actually learn something, but he didn't want me to spend any time creating these training materials. So how did he expect that they're just going to come out of the air? I'm just going to wave a magic wand and they're just going to appear? Who knows? So I was getting no support. In a very short amount of time, besides training, I started doing consulting. So I would actually get on a plane and go to client sites and help them with their implementation, usually before they went live with the software, but sometimes I would be there after they were already live to help them with all kinds of things. I could also help them remotely, but back in the 90s, we actually made a presence usually by going to the customer site. So then I was bringing money into the company that way as well. Then they wanted me to learn something that they called style. So usually when there's software and there's an item number, like when you order something online, there's an item number. Well, in clothing, if it comes in 4 different colors and 5 different sizes, it's a 3-dimensional item number. So there's the item number plus the color plus the size, and they called that style. So I learned that and was flying around helping companies implement that as well. So I was doing much more than I was hired to do. I was the youngest consultant in my group by far. I was in my 30s. Everybody else was in their 40s and 50s, which of course means I was the least paid of all of them, also because I was younger. At the time I was hired, there was one HR person for the whole company, and she wasn't in our office. She was in the U.S. headquarter office, which was in New Jersey. Then at my company, we hired somebody, and she was working on her master's degree. Loved her. She was wonderful. She had some materials to share with me because she knew that I was doing a lot of training, and she was very helpful. And I had shared with her some of the struggles I was having with him. I just didn't realize at the time how serious it was. So time went on. I was in the office one day talking with her, and she told me she had a chat with him. She told him, Mark, the manager, that as part of his job as a manager of people, part of his job was to give his people the tools they needed in order to do their jobs well. And he said to her, no, it isn't. So things like this started to stress her out so badly that she quit and went back to the company she had worked at prior. So now we were down to one HR person. Now, I don't remember the exact chain of events. I don't remember if she quit before he was trying to fire me, or if he started to fire me before and while she was still there. I don't remember. But he sat me down one day, I want to say it was early July, and he told me I wasn't bringing in enough money to the company. And if I didn't up that, that I would lose my job. So I started backtracking to all the money I brought in. I knew how much I brought in per student when I trained in the office. I knew how much I brought in when I traveled to train, and I knew how much I brought in per hour when I went to consult. So I figured out I was bringing in 2.5 times my salary to the company. Now, here's my mistake. I didn't go to the general manager and talk to him. I didn't go to a couple of the top salespeople who seemed to like me and talk with them. It was a fairly small regional office, as offices go. I would say we were on 3 floors by then, and there were maybe, I don't know, under 100 people. So, yeah, I could have done that, but I didn't. So he was obviously getting support from somewhere, and again, the HR person just didn't know me. So time went on. That was July. Sometime in there, I want to say a little bit before that, there was a module that I was just having the hardest time grasping, and I always had someone else teach it because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how they were explaining it. It was a module that connected the inventory module to the financial module. It was this in-between little thing that you had to set up. So finally I said to a colleague one day, will you please just sit with me for as long as it takes and keep explaining this process to me and how to set it up until I get it? And she did. She kept changing how she said it. Finally, the light bulbs went on, and within a minute, I knew how to teach it better. I put together a class the next time I was teaching it, and there was a guy who came to my class who was from our California office, flew in just for this class. We started at 8:30. At 10 o'clock, we took a break. And he said to me, this is the 3rd time I've taken this class, and it's the 1st time I understand it. And I said, that's because I'm explaining it properly. So little more time went on. So July was when I got the inkling that he was trying to fire me. I mean, my stress level was so high. And in September, I was scheduled to teach classes 3 weeks in a row. One guy flew in from another office to take my classes. He had been there for 3 months at the company. And we went to dinner one night, and in the car, I told him, my boss is trying to fire me. And just the shock, he was like, what? He said, I've been at this company for 3 months, and you're the first person who's been willing and able to show me how it works, how the system works. So sure enough, I got my classes taken care of, and Mark called me in to a meeting one day, and had the HR person on the phone and basically said, we're going to let you go, and what we'll do is a resignation, and we'll pay you this much severance to go away. And I had her on the phone. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to let it loose. So I let her know everything he had been doing, anything I could think of. Of course, I had no notes in front of me. I had no idea this was going to happen on this day. So I told her everything he did. Well, I'm glad I did that because I did apply for unemployment insurance. I don't know if each state works the same, but in my state, if you're fired with cause or fired for cause, then you don't get unemployment benefits. They won't pay you. And they will investigate at everybody who applies to see if you're fired with cause or without cause, and they'll only pay you if you're fired without cause. And I got unemployment benefits. So, and they wouldn't talk to the former HR person who left the company. They'd only talk to the current HR person. So anyway, I did get unemployment, but it was a really, really stressful experience. Going back to my other idea, could I have found advocates there to help me out? Maybe. It depends, but I should have gone to them early when I was having all these little problems with him. That's when I should have gone to the general manager. I don't think HR would have helped me because I think one HR person in a company that size, and she didn't know me. I don't know that she would have helped. And just so many stories I've heard from people since writing the book on workplace bullying say, so many people say HR didn't help them. So I would find an advocate. So now I realize this, finding somebody to have my back, who's higher up, who's respected in the company, would have been a really good move. But I was young, I was stressed out. These behaviors are so subtle that you don't realize they're happening. That's part of the problem with subtle bullying. He's not yelling at me, he's not calling me names, he's not swearing at me. He never did any of those things. But he was working against me to put me down in little ways over time. And that can also be a boss from hell. If you have a boss or coworker from hell, I would advise you, if you're already in there, to find an advocate to help you navigate the process, somebody who's well respected at the company. Find ways to not work for somebody, a boss who's like this. If it's a coworker, find a way to get away from them. They're just going to sabotage you. And of course, if you can identify these people early on during an interview, before you're even around them and working with them on a daily basis, find ways to identify that personality up front so that you don't have to deal with that kind of thing. So if you are the target of a bully right now, please check out my book, Not All Bullies Yell and Throw Things. I also speak at companies. I have workshops and training for a general employee audience, which would be identifying bullying and what do you do if you're in it, or what do you do if you witness it. And then I also do a companion training that's for people who manage people, any kind of managers or supervisors or directors. And we're talking about how we lead people and how we communicate and how we don't come across as a bully and yet still lead. How do we do this? And then if we notice bullying on our team or somebody at our team or even off to the side, what do we do? How do we step up and be an advocate? I'd love to come to your company and deliver these kinds of trainings. That would be really enjoyable. I love eradicating bullying. It's really rewarding, and I like helping companies create a workplace where people actually want to come to work, because you know what happens when people want to come to work? They're more productive and they're more engaged. All right, thanks for watching. Bye. A few months ago, I was talking with a company about coming in and talking with their female employees, their women employees, about workplace bullying. And I had a contact there. They were all excited about this topic, and finally